Ever wondered what each new client costs your firm? Here's the chance to get crystal clear. Look, after working with law firm owners for over the last 12 years, in fact, 1,000 of you, in walking through this process, over thousands of appointments set, initial consultations, and helping law firm owners scale to a profitable point, we've determined what it takes to master this metric of marketing. And here's the deal with marketing. If you don't understand marketing and that it encompasses both advertising and sales, you're already behind the eight ball. So what we want to walk through is, what is that North Star metric for you? What's that number that if you had to pinpoint everything back to from a marketing perspective, you could say we're winning as a law firm and we've built a sustainable marketing system? I want to start by illustrating that marketing is an umbrella. Marketing sits at the top of the umbrella. You've got two sides of the umbrella: advertising and sales. Marketing is the convergence of both advertising and sales coming together. Maybe it's just you at the moment if you're a solo owner or you don't have anybody yet on the marketing or sales side. But if you've got a team, you've got to understand that in order for you to build a successful new client attraction pipeline in which marketing encompasses the majority of it, you've got to have a clear communication protocol between your advertising person, vendor, team, and your salesperson, vendor, team, aka your appointment setters, your attorney or non-attorney salesperson, or maybe still yourself if you're running the sales numbers, to be able to clearly track, how is my marketing performing? And ask yourself, what is the goal? Where are you trying to get to? Because in order for you to be able to have an effective marketing department, or just marketing as a whole for your law firm, you have to understand what you're trying to achieve. That will help you reverse engineer. What you need to start with is you need to figure out, where are you trying to get to from a revenue perspective? Like, how much growth do you want? And in order to determine what that goal looks like, we've got the capacity calculator to help you work backwards off of that. We're happy to give it to you for free. You can go to yourpracticemaster.com/calculator. Link's also in the description below. You've got to figure out, what is that revenue marker you want to hit? And then from there, you can start to work backwards. And what I mean is, now you can look at, what is your average case value? And when you know your average case value, how many new clients do you need at that average case value to hit that revenue marker? So total revenue divided by your average case value give you the number of clients you need. This is where knowing your PCLC, or your lead conversion data, is important. We've got other videos talking about how to measure that, but knowing what your show rate is, set rate, and a close rate, when you're working this backwards, this is how you're going to build out your numbers. Once you know how many new clients you need, depending on those numbers, it will determine what the rest of this needs to look like. And let me tell you where it ultimately comes back to. As you reverse engineer, you're going to get really clear on two key things. How many appointments do you need on the calendar? And how many leads do you need to generate in order to accomplish that number of appointments on the calendar? You obviously need leads to accomplish the appointment set. But the North Star metric as a law firm that you should be tracking to determine if your marketing is successful, or I should say your advertising is successful, where most law firms go wrong is they get caught up in the number of leads that they need to generate. And obviously that's an important metric, because your number of leads gives you a pool to work with to get appointments set. But the real number you need to be measuring for effectiveness of your marketing, and this is the convergence of advertising and sales, is your cost per appointment set. That's your North Star metric. Why? Because if we just go off of leads, that only gives us part of the equation. That'll give us a good equation from an advertising perspective, how our advertising campaigns are working, because now you can measure cost per lead and number of leads you generate. But if we want to measure marketing effectiveness, that's the convergence of advertising and sales, which is where cost per appointment gives you that root number you need to understand to be able to measure. Here's what I can tell you. Cost per appointment is going to vary depending on your practice area. Certain practice areas are going to have a higher cost per lead, which is going to lead to a higher cost per appointment set. And knowing that cost per appointment will tell you a couple of things. how effective are the campaigns that you're running from an advertising perspective, and how well is your intake person or intake team performing. If you've got an underperforming intake team, like 100 leads, but only 40 of them are setting appointments, that's going to drive your cost per appointment up. If you fix your intake team and start setting 60 out of those hundreds, that's going to drive your cost per appointment down, and you're in a much better position. So that number is a gold star metric to be able to identify, okay, how well is the convergence between advertising and sales? Now, in order to determine your cost per appointment set, you need to take your total advertising spend. This includes your ad spend if you're running ads, the cost for the vendor if you're using a vendor, maybe you're doing it in-house, and the sales costs. So what it costs you on the sales team, and divide that by the number of appointments set. And that's going to give you your total cost per appointment set. What you need to do when you're first starting out is you need to figure out what that number is over the course of a 6 to 12 month period. So that way you can determine what your average cost per appointment set. Now you can start to measure everything against that. That becomes your control piece. Now you can measure the effectiveness of your marketing against that control piece. When that number starts to move above your average cost per appointment set, you have the power to say, okay, did my set rate change? And is my cost per appointment set moving up because sales is underperforming? Or did the set rate stay the same and advertising is underperforming? This will help guide you on which of the departments is inefficient and underperforming and where you have some room for optimization. And then from there, that sets the rest of the process up for you. Everything else from there on out, you got to get people to show up and you got to get people to retain the firm. And you've obviously got to maximize your cash collection and average case value. But all of that is other functions outside of this concept of marketing, which is sales and advertising together. Now that you're clear on what this looks like, this is where most law firms go wrong when they look at marketing. They look at it at one side. Oh, marketing is leads. It's just working with a vendor, working with a marketing agency, generating leads. That's part of it. That's advertising. Marketing is combining that with your sales team and getting clear on the net result. We're not going to do marketing if it didn't help us get to the net result. What you need to start looking at as a law firm is your North Star metric, which should be your cost per appointment set, because that's going to give you clarity on how well your advertising team and your sales team are working together, spot the inefficiencies, and figure out where you have room to optimize for there. Once again, all of this starts with a goal. So you got to figure out what your goal looks like. And in order to determine what that goal looks like, we've got the capacity calculator to help you work backwards off of that. We're happy to give it to you for free. You can go to yourpracticemaster.com/calculator. Link's also in the description below. Also, we're happy to schedule a quick 10 minutes with you to talk a little bit more about how we do this in law firms. Hopefully this was helpful and cleared up some of the confusion on marketing.